Imagine waking up one morning and finding out that the richest man on earth now controls your government. Not through an election, not through a revolution, but through a phone call, a handshake, and a signature on an executive order. On January 20th, 2025, the day Donald Trump was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States, something else happened. Something quieter. Something that most people didn't fully understand until it was too late. A man who had never held public office in his life. A man whose companies had been fined, investigated, and sued by the very government he was now about to run, was handed the keys to Washington. His name? Elon Musk. And what he did next changed America forever. To understand how Elon Musk ended up inside the US government, you have to go back to the summer of 2024. Donald Trump was fighting one of the most controversial elections in American history. On one side, Kamala Harris, the sitting vice president. On the other, Trump, a former president facing 91 criminal charges. The polls were close, the money mattered, and Elon Musk decided to make a move. Between July and November 2024, Musk donated more than $250 million to Trump's campaign. Not millions, not tens of millions, $250 million. To put that in perspective, that is more than the GDP of some small countries. But Musk wasn't just writing checks. He was showing up at rallies. He was posting on X, the platform he owns, nonstop, every single day, pushing Trump's message to hundreds of millions of followers. He wasn't just a donor. He was a campaign engine. And when Trump won, Musk didn't wait for a thank you dinner. He wanted something in return. On November 13th, 2024, just days after the election, Donald Trump announced a brand new government department, something that had never existed before in American history. He called it the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. Not a real department, not a cabinet position, not something approved by Congress, just a group, an advisory committee. A team of people handpicked by Elon Musk himself, given access to the most sensitive financial systems in the United States government. And Musk made a promise so bold, so massive, that even his biggest supporters raised an eyebrow. He said DOGE would cut $2 trillion from the US federal budget. $2 trillion. That is more than the entire GDP of Canada. And he planned to do it in just 18 months. So who exactly was going to cut $2 trillion from the most powerful government on earth? Meet the team. The average age of DOGE core staff was 24 years old. Not economists, not policy experts, not former government officials with decades of experience. Software engineers, tech entrepreneurs, recent graduates from elite universities. Some of them had never filed a tax return. Some of them had never managed a team of more than 10 people. One of them was reportedly still in college when he was given access to the US Treasury's payment systems. These were Musk's people, loyal to him, hired by him, and answerable only to him. Within the first 2 weeks of January 2025, they moved fast. They walked into federal agencies unannounced. They demanded access to internal databases. They sent emails to thousands of government employees with a single question: justify your existence. And federal workers were told to list 5 things they had accomplished in the past week, or face termination. Over 60,000 federal employees accepted early retirement offers, not because they wanted to retire, but because the alternative was unclear and terrifying. And then came the cuts. In February 2025, DOGE announced it had identified over 29,000 federal contracts to be canceled. Government websites went dark. Research programs were frozen mid-experiment. A cancer research project funded for 12 years was canceled in an email. 3 sentences, no explanation. Scientists who had dedicated their careers to fighting disease found out they had lost their funding through a form letter. But it wasn't just scientists. USAID, the agency responsible for humanitarian aid in over 60 countries, was essentially shut down overnight. Food programs in conflict zones were suspended. Health workers in Africa and Asia were left without supplies they had been promised. And all of this was being decided by a team that was, in many cases, using AI tools, including ChatGPT, to analyze government spending and recommend cuts. That's not speculation. That came out later, as, in court, Elon Musk promised $2 trillion in savings. So, how much did DOGE actually save? By March 2025, DOGE's own website claimed it had saved $140 billion. But investigative journalists and independent economists looked at those numbers and found something disturbing. Many of the savings were double-counted. Some were contracts that had already expired. Others were future spending that was never going to happen anyway. At least $8 billion in claimed savings turned out to be a single contract that was listed multiple times. The Washington Post, the New York Times, and Reuters all published independent analyses. Their conclusion? The real savings were somewhere between $2 and $8 billion. Not $140 billion, not $2 trillion. 2 to 8 billion. Meanwhile, the U.S. federal deficit kept growing. By mid-2025, the Congressional Budget Office, a nonpartisan government body, reported that the federal budget had actually increased to $7 trillion. Let that sink in. DOGE was created to cut spending, and under its watch, spending went up. But the financial story was only part of the damage. The firings had consequences that no one had fully calculated. The IRS lost thousands of experienced tax collectors right before tax season. As a result, the government collected significantly less in tax revenue than projected. The FAA, the agency responsible for air safety, saw hundreds of safety inspectors walk out the door. Aviation experts warned that the U.S. was entering a period of increased risk. The Veterans Administration, which provides health care to millions of American soldiers, reported massive service delays after staff cuts. And through all of this, Elon Musk was still posting on X, still calling government workers lazy, still promising the savings were coming. They never did. By the spring of 2025, something was shifting. The polls told the story clearly. Elon Musk's approval rating among American adults had dropped below 30%. Even among Republicans, Trump's own base support for DOGE was weakening. Tesla, Musk's electric car company, was feeling the pressure too. As Americans grew angrier at Musk's role in government, Tesla sales began to fall. In the first quarter of 2025, Tesla reported its worst sales numbers in 3 years. Protests appeared outside Tesla showrooms across the country. In Europe, where Tesla had been growing aggressively, sales dropped by as much as 40% in some markets. Musk's net worth, which had peaked at over $400 billion in early 2025, began to fall. And then came the lawsuits. Federal judges began blocking DOGE's access to government systems. Courts ruled that some of the firings were illegal. Reinstated employees showed up to work, only to find their badges had been deactivated. One federal judge described DOGE operations as chaotic, unprecedented, and potentially unconstitutional. And quietly, almost without announcement, Elon Musk began stepping back. In May 2025, he announced he was reducing his time with DOGE to focus on Tesla and SpaceX. In the weeks that followed, his name disappeared from DOGE press releases. His posts about government reform became less frequent. By November 2025, DOGE was officially dissolved. 6 months ahead of its original schedule. No ceremony, no press conference, no final accounting. Just gone. But the story didn't end with DOGE dissolution, because by early 2026, the depositions started. In courtrooms across Washington, former DOGE staff members were being called to testify. And what came out was extraordinary. One staffer admitted that decisions affecting billions of dollars in government contracts had been made using AI-generated summaries without any human verification. Another testified that he had been given administrative access to the Treasury Department's payment systems within 48 hours of joining DOGE. He had no security clearance. No background check had been completed. He had simply been let in. A senior official from the Office of Personnel Management testified that she had flagged concerns about the legality of mass firings in writing and been ignored. Perhaps most damaging of all, a whistleblower from inside DOGE testified that internal documents showed the team knew as early as February 2025 that their savings figures were inaccurate. They published them anyway. The lawsuits are still ongoing. As of April 2026, multiple cases are moving through federal courts. Some of the fired employees have been reinstated. Many have not. The research programs that were canceled, most are still canceled. The international aid that was cut, much of it has not been restored. And the $2 trillion Musk promised to save? The U.S. national debt has continued to grow. So what do we make of all this? Was DOGE a genuine attempt to reform a bloated government that simply moved too fast and made too many mistakes? Or was it something else entirely? A transfer of power, a test of how much one man could take before anyone stopped him. What we know for certain is this. For a period of several months in 2025, a private citizen with no elected mandate, with billions in personal wealth, with no accountability to the American voter, had access to the financial systems, the personnel records, and the decision-making machinery of the most powerful government on earth. And when it was over, he simply walked away. Back to his companies, back to his rockets, back to X. No consequences, no apology, no refund. And the question isn't whether Elon Musk is a genius or a villain. The question is simpler than that. How did we let this happen? And more importantly, could it happen again?